Hey, welcome back to another episode. This is one of those cool ones that we haven't done in a long time, the Chopping It Up With series. And this is Chopping It Up With Dana Collins numero tres. Although it's actually the fourth time she's been on the show, but this is the third Chopping It Up. But this is kind of a hybrid because this came about, we were having a conversation the other day about millennial generations and the later ones, X, Y, and Z. And we were kind of throwing things back and forth. And I said, she said, we gotta do something with this, a training, something, because we've got an event coming up in October, and we were thinking about that, but the whole calendar is full. So we said, hey, let's do another chop. So it's a chopping it up. Who knows where we'll go, but we'll start at least with that topic, which is, hey, so welcome back. First of all, it's lovely to see you.
Thank you so much. I'm getting my daughter to get my dog who just decided at this moment that it would be a good idea to bark.
He was like, what? And I was like, I thought it was that you had a cat now because it looked like he was on top of the counters.
Those are stairs, and you can see she's trying to sneak in here. You would have met Ava if you had been able to come to Turkey. She came and she did a lot of the social media content for them. So
yes, and I was supposed to meet her there.
Yes.
All right. So before we get into this, just you are the author of the recently released Network Marketing Today, The Big Build.
Yes, the one that you said had the worst launch in history.
Yeah, we did a show all about it. So you guys, if you didn't see that, go back and see the show.
And I've got this book on my desk too.
That other book looks sexy too.
Yeah.
So how's the book doing? What have you learned from getting it out? How's it changing your life? Just what's happening?
So the thing that shocked me is, as you said, it was the worst launch in the history of books. But despite that, it's selling very well. And I think it's largely because people are reading it and then recommending it. Yeah. So it's gotten a lot of grassroots traction that I didn't really expect. I think my launch was the way it was because I was very scared of just putting something out in the world that felt very personal and very just like letting people kind of inside of my worldview of network marketing. So I felt I didn't go into it with like a ton of confidence. And so I sort of tried to be very quiet about it. But I realized, I guess the biggest realization that I've had is, number one, the lack of really good books that are current in the market today. So much of the material out there is either dated or it's been created by someone who's actually never done this and is looking at this from the outside, providing their perspective of what they think we do versus what we do. And then I think...
Wait. I have to repeat that. That's so profound, because I think you're exactly dead on with that there's so many of these, not just books, but ebooks and trainings and seminars of them presenting what they think we do instead of what they do.
Well, I know for me personally, I remember being in this 5 years, I reached, I was at the top of the comp plan thinking, wow, I knew so little. And then I was in for 10 years and I thought, wow, I've known so little. And it takes a really long time to really grasp the depth of what we do and how we do it. It's so surface what people perceive, because on the surface, again, it can be, and I just did, ironically, I'm writing a training for our conference. And I was telling the story about you standing on stage and saying, who would like to sponsor me? And every hand went up. And of course you said, I wouldn't join your company, because we had a room full of people who fundamentally didn't understand the business model, because on the surface, people had built these essentially retail environments.
They understood the retailer model.
Yes, exactly. They understood the retail part of it, but not the business building part of it. And arguably, the business builder part of it, well, not arguably, it's true. The business builder part of it is a much more complex and difficult thing to do. But ultimately, I believe it's obviously where the income that, like all of the attributes that make our business so unique, that's where it comes from, the team building. But I also think that it's the most rewarding part of our business. But for some reason, people mentally just can't sometimes wrap their brain around it. And they're like the two kinds of people that come into the business from my experience. One who comes in and they can sell ice to Eskimos, as they say. They can sell anything, but they can't build a team. And then you have people who can come in and they can build a team, but try to get them to sell things, and they just they can't sell their way out of a paper bag. So it's sometimes you've got to help them merge those skill sets. But give me the person who can't sell and I can teach them to find customers. I think it's harder the other way around.
So much so. And they don't know what they don't know. So like I get attacked, kind of often by people who are like, oh, you're just the evil, mean, greedy, capitalistic pig because you just talk about how to build the business and it's all about the customers. And I'm trying to get my homeopathic drops or my skincare or my vitamin minerals or whatever that I think are going to save the world and all the starving children in Africa. And you're just this money grubbing SOB. And I'm like, I've got 15,000 customers on my team because I don't look for customers, because I look for business builders and show them how to get customers as part of it, right? And that's the part they don't get. Like, okay, great. You have 8 customers who respect you and adore you and buy the product from you every month. You're helping 8 people in the world. If you really believe in those products, if you really think everybody in the world should take those products, why the hell aren't you building a business and creating a team, getting duplication, getting leverage, and help thousands of people instead of tens of people?
Well, let's take it a step further, because I've had people say to me, you're like, I can think of an incident where there's a woman that lives in my neighborhood who just is I won't describe her, just on the off chance that this podcast gets in her hand. But needless to say, she's very socialist in her political sort of orientation. And she called me a capitalist. And I looked
As
at
an
it
insult.
as an insult. And I thought, okay, if that's what you think, but let's look at this. And I said, so why do you say that? Well, you're all about making money. And I said, well, all right, so what makes socialism a better model? Well, there's, this redistribution and whatever it was. And I said to her, well, let me give you an example of how my business can work both ways. I have people in my organization that they can't work for whatever reason. They can't. They don't. Their health has declined, or they've just sort of gotten to the point where they're too old to get in a car and see at night and do the things that this business requires. And guess who does it for them? I do, or their upline person does it. We continue to work their businesses for them and they reap the benefits. And so I'm giving my time for the benefit of someone else. So I'm redistributing my time, which arguably is the more important asset because I can't get it back. And so there are people in my organization that have a check because I put my time into making sure that they have one, because they built organizations that supported my family. Now I can repay that favor.
Yeah, it's this whole socialism, which in my mind is communism with lipstick.
Yeah,
It's a real issue in the world today. And I just I know, like, we were chatting before we went live about me being active in the field and recruiting people again, and getting out of the stable and running as a thoroughbred again, which I was chafing to do for a few years, but couldn't because of the company I was with didn't really have the logistics for the first world, and I was giving them time to build that out. And as I get out there, I'm just, as you just, there's the big driver for me, because people, the people who know me close know this, but I don't need the money. I'm living in my dream house. I'm driving my dream cars. I've got the money thing out of the way. I've been smart with money. I've made millions of dollars thanks to this profession. What the thing that's getting me out of this is the empowerment aspect of building a team of people who are, it's like, I want to reach the people like my mother, who was a single mom who raised 3 kids by herself. I want to reach people like me, who was a 15-year-old kid in jail for armed robbery and burglary, and it's a high school dropout and didn't have connections and education and money, and was able to build a life. And all these, the people of our kind of main topic today, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, because they're screwed right now.
100%. I mean, even like I was listening to, it was like, or it was maybe kind of came up on like a feed, you know how your computer, like you'll see things and it's talking about the stock market is going up, and it's like, it doesn't, like your 401k isn't outpacing inflation. Inflation is killing whatever gains you're making right now. And that's if you have a 401k. And these kids, they don't have one. They're coming out of school in so much debt without a degree that's makes any sense in the world. Like if they had to go to a bank and sit down with an officer in a bank and say, I want to take out a loan for $200,000, I'm going to major in Bedouin studies, they'd laugh and they'd say no. But yet these colleges have an infinite supply of money that comes from the taxpayer. So they have no incentive to manage costs. And it's kind of, I feel bad for the generations that are that have kind of come behind, because they're inheriting a lot of challenged institutions that impact their ability to buy a house, to do all the things. And like you, I believe this business is the answer. I really do believe that.
So I was pulling up while you were talking, I jumped to pull up my PowerPoint deck that I'm working on for the presentation, for my presentation. The percentage of, if we talking about public college, forget these people who spend $250,000 on college in a private college, public college, the percentage of their income to go to college for our generation was 14%. For our kids, it was 17%. For these Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Zs right now, 42%.
Well, Randy, I have one in college right now that, and I can say this unequivocally. I have 3 kids that have gone to college back to back to back. two were in college at the same time. And because of this business, I could pay for their education and they could leave school without debt because of this business. And I can't underscore enough to people how this business is, it's so much more substantial than people understand. And I really believe that if this were the primary model through which people purchased product, you took out the big retail giants, the Walmarts and the Targets. First of all, it would be better for the environment. But number two, it would literally change the world, and it would raise up middle class and upper middle class tremendously. And it would create a lot more unity in the world, because if you have teams and countries, you don't want harm to come to those people. You know them, their families. I mean, and so part of, like I start to wonder if some of the demonization of network marketing is intentional, if that makes sense. I mean, we've earned some of it, absolutely. But if there's a broader realization that this could really upend a lot of the dynamics of retail and economy.
It's a fascinating question, because if you look at, like, remember when Bima got slammed and shut down here in the States, they brought that on themselves, as you said, in many cases, because they were going after all these college kids and going to college campuses and telling all the students at campuses that they were stupid to be students in college campuses. And but if you look, we talk about big pharma and we talk about big insurance, but if we wanted to talk about big education, the endowment that Harvard and these big universities have, and the amount of students that they allow in, and they restrict the flow to create the sense of scarcity, which is total bullshit. It's not.
Do you know what the average GPA coming out of Harvard is right now?
What is it?
Guess. Just throw out a guess.
Well, Harvard is okay. It should be 3.65. I don't know. What is it?
3.8.
Okay.
Which means that, in my opinion, that the standards are quite low at Harvard for academic rigor, right?
And I mean, it's Harvard. If you could own a brand, Delta, Coca-Cola, Apple, a logo, a brand, I got to tell you, pretty near the top of the list would be Boston College, Harvard, Stanford, FSU, I mean, University of Florida. I mean, just what they make on the football programs, right? The University of Tennessee, Auburn, Georgia Dogs. I mean,
yep. Well, you
there's
wrote
a
about
reason they're paying coaches, college football coaches, $8-10 million a year in salaries.
Well, and risky is the new safe. You wrote about this. You talked about
did.
how outdated the model is, and I just can't help but feel at some point it's going to break.
Yeah, and your question is, I wonder, I'm not prone to conspiracy theories, unlike most of the world today on social
Right.
media. But it's an intriguing question, like how many of these colleges and universities might see network marketing as a threat? How many of these e-commerce companies, these tech companies, these retailer companies might see it as a threat?
I mean, just think about this. You have an industry that's doing billions and billions of dollars worldwide. I'm not sure what the number is for network marketing at this juncture, but it's in the billions.
Yeah.
And you couldn't go and take a class on this at any institution across the country. That makes no sense.
Yeah, it's, that's food for thought. Now fair, fair disclosure, I did teach a couple of classes on that at colleges. But the last one wasn't here. It was actually in Columbia, where they asked me, which is just hysterical for me as a high school dropout, that they're saying, hey, come in and teach a college course. But like that's when I say I got back in the game because I'm about the empowerment. A big part of the reason is the foundation that I'm working with this company, and it's about empowerment. And that was kind of what I was working on, was like a online learning platform for entrepreneurs. And then I wanted to make it, the vision was, so when you sign up and you say, yes, I'll pay $2,500 a year to be in your entrepreneurial platform, it would fund free scholarships for X number of young, at-risk teens in inner cities and places that don't know how to break into entrepreneurship. That, they're in terrible neighborhoods without good role models. The only role models they have are, okay, the rapper made it, and the running back who got drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs made it, and the neighborhood drug dealer made it. But they don't see the average person having a pathway to financial freedom and success. And we got to change that. We have to get out there. So that was, that's kind of the long-term vision of what I'm doing, is how do we empower those people? And the big thing that I'm baking into the cake in terms of what I'm doing right now is this Operation Gen XYZ rescue, because, I'll put a link in the show notes for people. Professor Scott Galloway from New York University did a TED Talk maybe 2 months ago or less. It had like 7 million views within a week or two. And the topic was, do we really love our kids?
I saw this.
Okay, yeah, because it's gone really viral.
I saw it. I saw it. I'm not sure. Yeah, I saw it. And he talked about what they're experiencing financially, and like how we've set them up essentially for failure.
Yeah, and he's I don't know, he's probably a little younger than me. He might be younger than you, but he's he's a boomer. He's a baby boomer, and he's done a lot of work recently about the gulf of income distribution and the percentage of it that is now in the baby boomer generation.
Yep.
And the percentage of it that's now with these XYZ generations. And oh my God, the gulf is so disproportionate, so much more disproportionate, I hope I'm saying that right, than it's ever been. So that was kind of his come to Jesus talk that he gave to Ted, was, yeah, okay, bullshit. Yeah, you all say you love your kids. We all say as a society, we love our kids, we value our kids, but what are we doing to them? Look at the financial place, and then talk about the national debt here in the US, and then pretty much every other country around the world, the same thing, right? Look at Venezuela, look at UK, look at Australia, look at everywhere. I mean, we have mortgaged away their futures completely for the next 10 generations. So it was and he's a little socialistic at the end, right? He's a typical Northeast college educated liberal.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he also had a lot of really excellent points in there that I think this is a guy you should pay attention to. Even, he's making the argument that at some point, I think it's him, but that, we may need to look at universal basic income at some point. And I'm actually open to that, right? That, I was pretty impressed with the take that Andrew Yang had on it when he was running for president. I'm totally the opposite of communism or socialism, but I do feel like as tech develops and what is happening to our younger generations right now has to be stopped and it has to be reversed, and we will need to look at.
And the thing, I think honestly, it's going to start with, I grew up in Washington, D.C. My dad was solidly in that mess, and I have a little understanding of the mechanisms that drive government. And what I think is, I think we're at a tipping point, if you will. Government doesn't produce anything. And so you've got an organization that doesn't produce anything that needs to grow in order for people to advance, in order for it to really, it's for people to advance, for people to make more money, they need to grow their departments. And so you've got this organism that's continually expanding without accountability, without any accountability whatsoever, that doesn't produce anything, that just needs to be fed by the taxpayer. And so it starts with government accountability and reducing. We don't need it. Just recently, I helped my son with what I thought would be a very simple thing to resolve: where to put the dumpster at his restaurant. I had to go through 5 different departments in Savannah to get approval to put a dumpster in an alley on the side of his restaurant, on the property of the restaurant. And it was insanity. I had to go through the zoning commission to make sure that the zoning was okay, another department to make sure the fence was okay. Like, you don't need that many people to make that one determination.
It's insane.
And that's what's happened. We have a government that has, it's too many layers, too much bureaucracy. It's really hurting business. Government does good, but it doesn't, but it can also start to trip itself up by becoming too expansive. And there's no we have checks and balances for executive branch, and our legislative, we have these checks and balances within the branches of government, but not for the accountability of spending and the growth of government. And that's where I think we've got to get a hold of that, because it's just going to get worse if I think, I don't remember, I was listening to one of the committee, they do the Senate committee hearings at C-SPAN, talking about some of the places that the money goes. It was jaw-droppingly like how these stupid things we're funding, $1 million here, 10 million here, to see, how many, and stuff that's absolutely not okay. Like, how far up can you drop a cat before it's going to get hurt or die? What? Like, why do we need to know that? And what tortured person wanted something like that funded and thought it would be okay to ask the government for money? And who decided it was okay to give this money? It was like that. And I'm not
No, they spent millions on a study on the flow rate of ketchup, as opposed to just let the market work, and people will buy the ketchup that flows at the rate they like.
Heinz can afford to figure out through focus groups how fast people want their ketchup to come out of the bottle.
They certainly can. My last apartment, I had carpet in the living room. So I called this company to buy new carpet, and they say, okay, first we've got to get the building permit. I'm like, no, I just want to replace the carpet. They said, oh yeah, you need a building permit. I'm like, that's not possible. It's just not possible that a government entity could require a building permit to change my carpet. But they did. And it's like $300. And that was years ago. It's probably $800 or $1,000 now for a permit, so that they can you
Yeah, the
know,
carpet that
run
you're
that
gonna buy
machine.
and put in your house that
Yeah.
you, oh, it's just, it's, yeah.
All right. So, you brought up this subject of the generations because you had seen a speaker or you had read something. What prompted you that we got down this rabbit hole?
Well, so I had the privilege last week, was it last week or the week before? I mean, everything's kind of morphing together here, of going to the National Conference for the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. I'm on the board of my local club. Um, and I had no idea what I was getting into, quite frankly. Like I didn't know. It was like you're required to be on the board and go to these conferences. And I thought, well, it's in Atlanta, I can drive. So I went, and first of all, it was just the caliber of general session speakers was outstanding. I mean, Jay Shetty was there, Nancy Lieberman, Usher spoke. And it was, I mean, and he didn't just get up there, Usher just didn't get up there and do like some generic or just off the cuff talk. It was very well thought out and very,
He's a brilliant guy.
it was a really what, like, you and I, we listen to something, but we're listening for structure, how he starts, how he ends, how he threads the segues. It was, by the time he was done, I mean, I was moved to want to increase my commitment to this organization. It was just inspiring and moving um, and just incredible. So that was the caliber of the general sessions. So then they had breakout sessions, and these weren't like 15 minutes where you hear somebody, hit the treetop of a very in-depth conversation. This was like 2 hour sessions where you really dug deep. And one of the sessions that I attended was uh, on emotional intelligence and leading different generations. And it was so good because I recognized the same challenges boards across the country are facing in the nonprofit sector. The woman who taught this is kind of the go-to person in the nonprofit sector for helping organizations work across generations. Some of the challenges that these organizations are facing are no different than the ones that I see within the network marketing space. And I thought, this is like something that needs to be discussed because there's a lot of, I think, misnomers about different generations and what they bring and what they don't bring that are damaging ultimately to the business, just as they're damaging to these boards. And so that's what brought this on, because I see the impact to network marketing, because I mean, it's just, even something as simple as a baby boomer writing in, a thank you note in cursive to someone, Gen Z, I mean, they can't read it because they weren't taught cursive, but they're bringing it back. They're bringing cursive back because you need to learn how to sign things. Think about that. Like the stupidity of taking it out in the first place. Like, how do you sign a document if you don't know how to write cursive? I mean,
Well,
you can,
but I can't think of it's been a long time since I signed a document in person. I have a digital signature. I digitally sign my income taxes, when I bought my condo, when, you know what I mean? So,
I just bought a car. It was all signing. Um,
yeah, that's true. When you do
I mean,
that, yeah.
there's things that, that you're going to sign. Not everybody's going to accept a digital version. So, I
At least
mean,
for now, because let's be honest, at some point very
it'll get
soon,
there.
when you buy a car, you won't be signing in, by hand.
Yeah. Well, eventually you won't own a car because you'll
Yeah,
just go on your app and one's going to show up and you're going to hop in
right.
and it's going to drive itself and you're going to do work. But but I mean, but it's things like that, the world wasn't ready for that to go away. We weren't
Mhm.
prepared for that to go away. Um, so but that's not even it's not even a major, that's not a major thing. It's one of the things that was interesting is you had a lot of, CEOs of different clubs and organizations that work with the Boys and Girls Clubs, and so some major players in the world of nonprofit in this room, and they're talking about, really it got down to kind of four areas where generations, there was some gaps in generations, one was, and this is just my note taking, or which, and I guess I distilled it down to three: self-awareness and self-regulation, um, uh, sort of having empathy towards people from other generations, and how do I distill this down? So collaboration was a challenge, and decision making was productivity and decision making were areas where there were huge clashes between the generations.
Yeah, the self-awareness thing, so much of that comes from a basis of self-esteem, I believe. So I was listening to a Gary V podcast a couple of weeks ago, and was talking about the trolling and the bullying and the stuff that happens on social media, TikTok, particularly for young kids, young girls in specific. And Gary has a take that I really disagree with, because his take is this shit has always been this way. Kids were always bullied. Kids were always neurotic in their school years. And, what social media does is it exposes human beings for how shitty they act sometimes. And it exposes them for, like how mean kids can be for other kids. And kids were always mean to other kids, and social media just made it apparent. Social media just reflects who we are. It doesn't change us, it reveals us. That's the posit that he was making. And I totally disagree with that, because I feel there's a difference between a bully who bullies two kids at school and a bully who can bully 800 to 1,000 people online, because social media allows him to be an asshole at scale. And that wasn't possible before social media. And the other thing that I disagree with Gary on, and he's a brilliant guy. I'm not throwing shade on him. I'm just disagreeing with his opinion on this. Is I think I go back to Charlie Munger, show me the incentive and I'll show you, the behavior. The incentive now is you got to get more likes on your TikTok. You got to get more follows on your Instagram. And so when you do the bully stuff, when you do the trolling stuff, when you do the virtual signaling stuff, it gets rewarded disproportionate than it does offline.
Yeah.
And that wasn't that way 20 years ago. And so I think this is my hypothesis. I think social media is making us meaner, and the internet at all, just because again, you got a keyboard warrior and he's living at home in his mom's basement with an avatar and a screen name, and he's in total anonymity, and he or she will say things that they wouldn't say in person.
Exactly, because you can hide
Yeah.
and not be accountable to the consequence of your action in that context. Um, But, when you talk about social media, it's interesting because I think one of the things plaguing our profession is people only show the results. In other words, and a lot of times it's not really the results, right?
It's rent the Lamborghini for a day.
Yes, 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 it's rent the Lamborghini for the day. So they're skipping the process, they're not sharing the journey. They're just, they're taking you to the end. And we're seeing younger people, and this was the subject of discussion, people who just want to skip the process and get to the end. And it shows up in things like, they feel like that they should, that like they don't understand, for example, that they're not part of the decision-making process of something. They haven't earned it because they haven't gone through the process to understand the decision that they're making, and that and one of the things that was discussed at length is how important it is to have in place processes that make it clear who makes the decisions. And that's in our business, that's part of your system, right? Which is, when somebody comes into your business, having them understand that that there's a system, and the system it is a top-down system. And until they've actually accomplished something within the framework of the business, they're not going to have input. But when they get to the top, then they can help make decisions and help with that input. But it's got to be crystal clear. Otherwise, they get hurt, that they're not included, even though they're brand new, they've been in the business 2 weeks. And a lot of this is being driven by sort of this social media mindset of, you can skip the process because I'm just going to show you the end result. And it's really, really changing the way people perceive things. And it also is discouraging for people when they go, I started the same time as this person, and look, but they're taking pictures of themselves with the rented Lamborghini for the day, or by the pool that their husband's, company, that the husband built, was created that lifestyle. It's very deceptive, and that's a problem.
With the issue they have with the top-down system is they believe it's corrupt.
Yeah.
So it can't be a top-down system. It has to be a bottom-up system. I did join 2 weeks ago. I have some great ideas on how to build a team of 20,000 people. Just because you built a team of 20,000 people doesn't mean you know better than me, because I'm only in this 2 weeks. So you should let me make those decisions. So that's kind of what, because they got a trophy when they were 10th place in the soccer match, when the team lost 18-0, and they still got a 10th place trophy. So they do believe in the whole bottom. And, there's a place for crowdsourcing. There's a place for bottom up in some contexts, but it's not like, as you're saying, they think it is, which is, I should make the decisions of what the system is and how the company operates, because I read about it in this Eric Worre book, and I've been in for 2 weeks now, and I watched some stuff on Instagram, so I'm an expert.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was the first thing that comes to mind. The other thing is just it's like I get approached so many times when I'm doing live events with Gen Z people, right? And they ask me in this really diplomatic way. They're like, okay, so you are the OG, you're the original gangster, and you made all these millions of dollars, and knowing what you know now, and if you could go back and start over again, and what is the one thing that you could tell me, and what are the hacks that you wish you learned along the way? And, I can just track the conversation, and then I could distill it down into one question, which what they're really asking me is, how do I get the success that you have without doing the work that you did?
Yeah.
What's the hack?
Yep.
What's the shortcut? Because I don't have time for that shit. I need to be rich now.
Exactly.
So
The process, let's skip it. I'm gonna go straight to the millions. Tell me what to do. Well, and that was the thing too, that was, like listening to these people say, we're trying to recruit from Gen Z. And of course, we're trying to, start thinking about incorporating the alpha generation when they are, when they sort of emerge as the the next generation of 20-year-olds. And we're trying to bring them in, but man, they don't show up for meetings. They just want to go on Zoom, and they come in late, and they want the meeting to stop and be caught up. And I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking, well, that sounds familiar, because this is exactly what I get calls from friends and other companies all the time, and they just want to vent, which is why do they not want to come to meetings? Like, why don't they show up? Why do they not want to leave their house? And other people that I know from companies calling because their companies, and one of them just closed their doors. And I think it was because a couple years ago they decided to lean all into younger generations and the way they want to do things. And I would get calls from friends at that company saying, they've made this terrible decision to lean into this idea that meetings aren't essential. We can do this all from our computers. We don't need to interface. And I really believe it was the beginning of the end for this company. Because I think, what's the stat? It's something like 67% of people, if they have people that they work with, that they feel are friends, they're more engaged.
yeah.
And if that's true, 67%, then if you're thinking that you're going to do this from the computer, right? And you're not going to leave your house, that's going to be a really hard business to build, because, because I've thought about this, when I'm with other people for my board responsibilities, I'm very engaged and I'm excited, and I leave and I have the fuel to kind of really pour myself into making strides. But when I'm isolated at my house, other priorities take over, right? My network marketing business, that becomes all consuming for me. And the other thing kind of gets pushed to the side. But then we have a board meeting and I'm with people, and now I'm like, and I'm talking to the other board members, and we're talking about ideas, and we go and we share a meal together, and now I don't want to let them down. And I don't think that's age preference. I think that's human nature, right? So, because the 67% of people are more engaged when they have friends, that runs across all generations. And so what I'm seeing is companies sort of pander to what younger generations want, not what younger generations need to be told and need to understand, because this business, there are immutable traits that this business possesses that you might want it to be a different way, but that's just not what it's ever going to be.
So here's my take on this, and I've been doing a lot of critical thinking about this
Yeah.
before I made my move back into the energy vortex. One of the things we do as sponsors is we need to play the role of parents.
Mhm.
And in a sense, as an analogy, right? So the worst parents are the ones who are the best friends of their children,
Exactly.
right? Because it's a recipe for absolute fucking disaster. You cannot be your son or daughter's best friend.
Oh,
You've got to you got to provide some guardrails. You got to provide some feedback.
kids
You
need
have
structure.
to, yeah,
Kids
right.
need structure. Yeah.
So it's the same thing. I think the analogy that you're describing when the company says, okay, yeah, we want all these Gen X, Gen Z people, and we're gonna do everything to pander to them. I do agree that's a recipe for disaster. Um, but the other recipe for disaster, the one that I had to check myself on, is the I'm a boomer. I've always done it this way. It worked for
100%.
me. Shut up
100%.
and listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. I got more experience than you. I had to say, no, I've got to be relevant to the market today. So like when I looked at building out my system for my team, when I looked out my schedule, like I did something that you don't see anybody do. There's not 1% of the people in the world who do what I did, which was to build an income of more than six figures a month and do the business in about 25 hours a week. Nobody does that in our space. 99% of the people who make 100,000 a month or more work 80 to 100 hours a week, is my experience. And they're
Yeah.
my clients and coaching clients, and I see it, and that's what I have to work on with them. So that's my experience of people in the profession. They're grinders, but they're just really high paid grinders. So they don't mind being grinders. They're like, I admit it, I'm a grinder. And yes, at 3 a.m., I'm still up because I'm doing a Zoom meeting with the team in Hawaii because it's 7 hours earlier there and whatever. But shit, I'm living in my dream home. I got 5 Lambos downstairs. I'm making $132,000 last month. And I'm like, you're still out of your mind. If you automate, if you systematize, if you scale, you're going to be able to do this in 25 hours a week. And I proved it. And that's with getting on airplane after airplane after airplane. I am a 3 million miler with Delta. I'm a 2 million miler with American. I have a couple million miles in other, everything from United to JetBlue to Lufthansa to, well, no, like Lufthansa be mileage partners with United, but I mean, I have with like Adria Air in Slovenia and airlines that, they're not mileage partners with any of the ones. So I have physically been in airplane seats to travel more than 7 million miles. I know I've at least taken an around the world flight where you literally start in Miami or San Diego and go completely around the world and come back, which I like to do because it's easier on your body than to go 12 time zones one way and then come back. So I've circled the globe on a trip at least 20 times, right? So, and with that, I still was able to build the business in 25 hours a week. But my goal now is I'm going to prove that you can make more than 150 or $200,000 a month and do it in 15 hours a week. That's my benchmark that I've set for myself. Because I love to write books. I love to do it's not that I'm lazy and I don't want to work. I love to work 10 hours a day because I'm an entrepreneur. When I worked 10 hours a day, that's like for most people, if they were watching soap operas or they were golfing or whatever. I'm an artist, I'm an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs are artists. So I don't want to get my network down to 15 hours a week because I'm lazy or I don't want to work. I just want to prove that I can be the most productive possible. And part of that was really looking at, okay, I believe companies, let me hold these so I don't show any logos. I don't want anyone to think I'm recruiting. Here's a catalog. Here's a mass market tool. Here's a how to make money in the comp plan. Physical printed materials. 95% of the people in our business won't do this, right? They say, it's digital. Why would printing and postage and mailing and shipping and wait, you're out of your mind. Like, no, the fact that my team will have a printed mass market tool that they can leave in the seat pocket in the lift. They can leave in the seat pocket on the airplane. So when they meet someone and they're never going to see them again, and they say, if I give you this booklet, my name and numbers on the back, would you review it? And then, call me if you're interested. I think there's power in that, right?
Well, the other thing
Same
too
way,
is not to interrupt you, but here's the other thing is that, you said this a long time ago, when everybody's zigging, you need to zag.
right?
And, I took another class that I took at this event was, I took classes from storytellers from Pixar to, just
Oh,
like,
wow,
mind-blowing.
cool.
But one of the things that they talked about is in the direct, in the fundraising space, postcards are one of the most effective tools because no
100%,
one sends mail. Everyone's
100%.
sending emails and texts. And so people are bombarded. And there are days where I open my mailbox and there is nothing in it. So it's, like printed material, again, it duplicates because everybody can access it. It's easy.
And I'm having this argument with every client company I work with. They're like, what, are you out of your mind? We stopped printing stuff 5 years ago. We saved so much money on it. I'm like, no, you're not saving money. You're losing sales. Right.
100%.
And it's the same with events, right? Live events. There is a place for, and I just came from one. I just did a big launch event in Venice, Italy, 2 weeks ago, and getting hundreds of people under the rooftop. There's magic. But I have to also, I had to be question the premise enough when I set it all up and said, okay, now I'm going to build today with 90% less travel than I did in 2010. 90%.
I love that.
And I'm going to do it because I'm not going to fight all the Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z people who want to live in their phone and do digital events. I'm going to embrace that, but I'm going to also bring them to my side of the equation to say, hey, so literally, like my days start at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., I'm doing presentations for EU, and like noon yesterday, I was doing a big leadership academy for Bulgaria because at noon my time was 7 p.m. their time. So I'm starting at 8, 9, 10 in the morning, and I'm working these other markets with just live streams. And I'm literally traveling 90% less, but building more, building bigger, building faster than even I did in
And
2010, 2008, 2010, right? When I was crushing it and building faster than very few people on earth had reached that level. So I've been open to change my belief and embrace because I don't like to work in a phone because I need my eyeglasses and I don't like to wear eyeglasses,
well,
right?
I think
But I
though,
learned, you know what? I gotta be able to work in this phone.
well, I think at the end of the day, it's like I said earlier, it's learning to have empathy towards different generations and really understanding their perspective. But it goes both ways. And one of the I think one of the solutions is, at the very beginning, it's just like you said, it's like parenting. Um, it's saying, look, here's the expectation. There will be, you're going to need to develop relationships with the people you bring into the business. You're going to need to show up for things. And I know, I have a lot of young people throughout my organization. And once they come to a few things, they get it. They go, oh, I get it, because they have bonding experiences. They develop relationships with somebody who maybe they've never met in person. And now, they meet in person and now they're friends, instead of just sort of, this, I don't know it's kind of stranger colleagues, right? You're colleagues, but you're strangers. Now you're friend colleagues. And
Uh-huh.
and that's where the there's a balance, where we can do a lot through Zoom, we can do a lot through technology. But we can't lose the relationship piece of what we do, because foundationally, that's what sets us apart, is the relational aspect of what we do. And when you're on a Zoom, you get done the Zoom, you go back to what you were doing before the Zoom. You go to a meeting, and when the meeting's over, you go and you sit down with your prospect and you talk. You sit down with your team and you talk, and you get to know them, and you get to have a little bit of a deeper relationship with them. And that relationship serves you to be the parent, because when you have to have a crucial conversation with someone about, hey, this happened, and I respect you, so I want to kind of work through this with you. You can't have that conversation with somebody you don't have a relationship with.
Yeah, the thing is, when that we have to recognize and deal with is, so we have all these, like, I'm going to talk about Cristo, guy in my team, right? And I'll be sure and send him a link to this, so he knows I'm not talking about him out of turn, because I'm really excited about his potential with the team. He's 29 years old, lives by himself with 2 cats, doesn't go out anywhere, plays video games, talks to everybody on his friends, all his friends on his phone. And he's the perfect example of XYZ generation, right? Doesn't make more money than his parents did at 29. He's, out there trying to make his way in the world. And so, and I'm telling him, okay, like in my system, we have 3 kits. We have a retailer pack, say it's $200, little under, a builder kit, just under 500, and a leadership pack, just under 1,000. Because I'm a big believer that when somebody invests in the business, they should get products, a good cross selection of products, and they should get tools like these things I was holding up, that literally you could send somebody home with a catalog of your products that really sexes up the product and tells them all the great science behind it and the benefits they get out of it and everything. So they buy again, and they come back and they try other products, right? So I like to build these into the kits. And so I'm telling Christo, yeah, and by the way, you got to come in at the leadership level, because that's what leaders in our company do. And when you get, and then there's like fast start commissions for every time you recruit someone at that and whatever. So the deal is, you're going to need to get 5 other leaders to come in, and then you're going to get your money back. So there's a pathway there, right? And he's like, Randy, come on, 20, my friends don't have that kind of money. We could never come in at that level. And so we're talking more and more. And okay, what do what else do you do? What other side gigs? So he says, well, I got into trading cryptocurrency with my friends. And these are the ones I think I'm going to call about the business, because my account, I made $500,000 in cryptocurrency, but I didn't realize I should take the money out when I had it in there. So unfortunately, that coin collapsed or that token collapsed and I didn't end up with a lot of money. But one of my friends, he bought a BMW with the money that he made with it. Another one of my friends, he took his whole family on vacation for 4 weeks. They spent, 30,000 euros or whatever because he made the money. Now, of course, what he was in was a crypto scam, but he didn't know that. He thought it was a legitimate thing, and he just thought that that particular currency collapsed when I'm sure there was no blockchain, there was no white paper, there was no there. It was just some con artist with a, back office fabricated to make it look like trading was happening, right? But I said, you brought in people and how much did they put in there? Oh yeah, they put 15,000 into that and they made 150,000. And one of my friends, he put 20,000 in and he missed a guy who made the BMW. And I'm like, okay, and now you're telling me that you can't bring in people in this business for $1,000 with legitimate physical product inventory, which they can sell with legitimate physical marketing materials that they can use to do business. And then it's like his whole world changed. Like, okay, and that's how I think we have to deal with that because forget the average 29-year-old, the average 39-year-old doesn't have $1,000 in the bank. They just don't. People don't have any savings. They live on 125% of what they earn.
Yeah.
So if they make 30,000 a year, they spend, 38 or whatever the number is because they're just increasing their consumer debt every year as they get older and older. So I get that they don't have that kind of disposable cash. But what I'm telling them is, I'm not selling you a bunch of Ferraris and bikinis on the beach and all that. I'm selling you a plan to become debt free. But to do that, you're going to have to bite the bullet. You're going to have to find some money and invest in that initial starter kit and the activation order. And you're going to have to get to a major event in 3 months or 4 months from now. You're going to have to travel and pay a night in a hotel. And it doesn't matter if you got 8 of you in the room and you have to sleep in the bathtub or the fold out sofa or sleeping on the floor, whatever. You're going to have to take the death defying leap and bet on yourself.
Yes.
And, you can't tell me you won't do that when you did it with a crypto scam. Right? And they're all doing that. They're doing crypto scams, they're doing Forex trading, they're doing all these investment bot stuff, and
Yeah.
they're finding money to do it. And we have to show them, hey, the way you found money for those sketchy deals, you need to find money for a legitimate opportunity.
Oh, wow. Have you heard of a company called 7K Metals?
I don't think so.
No. Yeah, I wondered if they're one of those sketchy things.
I don't know. It's literally the first I've heard of it. So I don't want to comment either way.
Yeah, I
Um,
haven't heard of them either. And it was one of those things that somebody said they invested in, just kind of the same story that and I didn't know anything about it, so I didn't know, what the, if they were
yeah, who knows? But the point I think that we all have to learn is I got to meet those generations where they are. They got to meet me where I'm willing to go, and I'm willing to go. And like I say, I'm excited about the possibility of what I can do with the mobile app now. I'm excited what I can do with the really kick-ass replicated website that just funnels people through the whole process. And the fact that I can do this without being another 7 million miles in airplanes. But I had to change my belief structure as well. So,
yeah,
because it's too easy to fall into the, cranky guy, don't walk on my lawn and we can fall into that. We can't let
Yes.
that happen.
Yes, yes. And again, it's that, it's respecting experience and at the same time being open to new ideas. And I really think it all gets down to how solidly you understand the fundamentals of our business, the principles of the business, what drives the business, because it's, there's a lot of technology. For example, AI that allows you to message a gazillion people at one time, that's, it's very tempting, but at the end of the day, if people figure out that it wasn't you, it was AI generated, it could end up backfiring, right? It's really, it all gets down to, does this facilitate the relationship, or, could it potentially hurt the relationship? And that at the end of the day is how you have to evaluate everything you're doing in the business, and eliminating getting people together hurts the relationship, but then ignoring the reality that you've got these generations that are used to so much remote kind of connection, uh not ignoring that is kind of the way things are done. And so marrying the two becomes important, but at the same time, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Yeah, there's so much nuance in this that we got to practice. Like literally this morning, I was just doing my workout before lunch, and one of my leaders texted me, WhatsApp me a voice note, and it's like, "Hey, I've got this person, and they've sponsored 10 people. They've only been in 2 weeks, but they've sponsored 10 people. They broke such and such rank. I wonder, can I get you and the general manager and the interpreter on a call with me? We could take 30 minutes." And I said, "No, sorry, I don't want to do that. It will never scale. It'll kill me time-wise if I set that precedent." Because one of the things I told her is I'm going to set up a weekly meeting just for leaders, my leaders and my team. And that's the venue where we'll bring people like that in, and we'll get them coaching, because
Mhm.
then I can scale it
Yep.
and I can make it work. And she wrote me back, "I love that idea," because, it's so easy to get sucked into scheduling 17 one-on-one Zooms after the other. And it's, I'm maniacal about it. How do I automate? How do I systematize? How do I scale? And the other thing that I was thinking about when you're talking about the relationships and whatever, so like Christo, when we were talking, when I was there with him in Bulgaria, maybe 3 weeks ago, um, was he's like, "But I don't go out. My friends don't go out. We don't have money for that. We don't go to concerts. Everybody thinks all the Gen Z people go to concert tickets cost 80 euros. We don't have that kind of money to do that. We don't go out to eat. We don't have money to go out to eat. And I'm like, so you and I and the rest of us boomers have to recognize that their relationship is done on Signal and Telegram and WhatsApp. And they might have people that they talk to 18 times a day that they haven't seen in person in 7 months. And they're DMing in a video game might be the channel of communication. So we have to recognize that. And then what we have to lovingly and gently prod them is letting them know. But yeah, that's why there's 30-year-old guys who are still living with their parents, and they're virgins. And they're not virgins because of their religious beliefs, and they're not virgins because they're want to join a monastery. The reason they're virgins is they don't know how to ask a physical woman out on a physical date.
Well, they're
Because, oh,
it's the same hiding that the bullying, with the
yeah.
bullying, it's the hiding behind the screen, and not really having a real relationship. And I've had a few younger people that I've been sort of helping out. And once I got them to understand that, your lawyer doesn't call you, your real estate agent or doesn't text you, your real estate agent doesn't text you, they call you when it's important. They might text you with something very short, but they don't text you the great American novel because, they're professional people, and you need to remember that you're a professional as well. And some things aren't, like a text isn't going to be as effective as asking them for a few minutes on the phone. And that just simple adjustment made all the difference for several of these gals to get their calendar filled. They were, it's so easy to say no to someone behind a screen. No, don't want to, can't do that. I'm busy. But when it's a person and you hear in their voice the sincerity and the desire, the passion, all the things, it becomes more difficult to kind of go, I'm not going to do that for you, or I won't take a look at your business.
You said something when your notes from the seminar. One of the things you said was self-regulation. What struck you about that, or what did you find fascinating or challenging or whatever about that?
I think that there's I just think in general, people can very easily be led by their emotions. And part of what creates success in this business and most things, most endeavors, is going to be your mental toughness, right? And when you're kind of used to not engaging with people directly, you don't sometimes develop that inner toughness that's necessary to go through the struggles that you're going to go through, the no's, the rejection, that it will think what feels like rejection, like all of these things that happen in the course of building a network marketing business. And so self-regulation, I think it's a function of how much life you've lived, right? Not everyone in younger when you haven't lived a lot, you're more prone to hit that emotional crescendo a little more quickly. But when you've experienced something enough, you go, oh yeah, no big deal, right? Hard things build that mental toughness. And so when you're working with young people, you have to remember they don't have that self-regulation yet. And you've got to help them with that. You've got to help them navigate, the no, and the person who said they were going to get started and then ghosted them. You've got to help them regulate that the 10 people that said they were coming to the meeting don't show up. You've got to help them kind of move through that and understand this is part of the job description, and don't react. You can be disappointed, but you can't quit. You can't stop working. And I know I started this business in my 20s. And when somebody said yes, it was like, I was excited, this is going to work. And then somebody said, no, this doesn't work. Nobody wants to join my team. You know what I mean? It was like this. And once I was able to self-regulate, it got so much easier. And we have to remember that not everybody comes into this with a lot of things that they've done that are hard. That you talked about it earlier, the self-esteem generation, that they didn't deal with the consequences of like taking the soccer ball to the other side of the field and scoring a goal for the other team and then getting a trophy, like our generation, you get, what in the hell were you doing? That was just stupid. Like we got the instant consequence. We didn't get a trophy.
Here's what I'll say. We're gonna have to follow up on this 6 months from now, a year from now, next chop it up. But I'm going all in on the millennial generations for my team because I know it's the future. And it's like when I was on the board for the opera.
Mhm.
I won't say which one, but I was a big donor, right? So, and then they asked me to meet with the board and I helped them with fundraising and, getting donations and stuff like that. And so I was always proposing these things that they thought were just insane radical. Like this was maybe 2010. Twitter was the biggest ever. It was just a fever pitch of it was the app that conversation was done on.
Yeah.
So I told him we need to have some seats in the auditorium for people. We call them the tweet seats for people who want to share during the performance. Like they looked at me like I called their mother a whore. They're like, civilized people don't bring cell phones to the opera. If they do, they keep them hidden. They don't take them out. The screens distract the people around them. This is not how it's done. And so at that time, they had this big 4-color magazine of each season, and it would list all of the six operas they were going to do that year and all the thing. And then they have the ticket sales, and then they had the donor pages in the back. So if you gave 100,000 or more, you got a full page listing in this magazine, and they put your picture and your name, and they got a bio of you and what you do. So of course I'm in there because I give them more than 100,000 a year. So I pick it up and I say, let me explain something to you. Let's look at these $100,000 donors. Here's me. And I had a cool picture with me playing softball or racing a Viper or I don't know what. But it looked like a person who wasn't dead. And then I showed the next one. There's a 90-year-old lady. There's a 80-year-old couple. There's a 85-year-old lady. There's a bunch of like elderly lady because women live longer than men. So there were all these widows who were very wealthy and their husbands were dead. And then there was like 2 or 3 pages where the person was literally dead. And the photo was an oil painting of them. It's like the worst trope you ever saw of rich people, like that they get oil paintings done of themselves and they put it in the dining room, and there was like 3 people that had those because they were dead and their estate still, they had written in their will that they were going to keep doing 100K a year to the opera. And I'm like, do you notice anything in common with all these people? And they're like, they're wealthy, they're donors. I'm like, no, they're all going to be fucking dead in 10 years.
Mhm.
So who's going to fund your fucking opera if we don't start to attract some younger people? So I would bring because only reason I was a fucking headbanger, rock and roll, heavy metal, right? I would have never gone to opera in a million years, but I fell in love with an opera singer. He was a tenor working in the young artist program at the Paris Opera. He introduced me to opera, and oh my, I go to the first performance, and here's a singer singing to 2,000 people without a microphone. Now, I'm a professional speaker, right? I need a microphone when there's more than 40 people to protect my voice. Because you need it for your larynx. These people are trained to project their voice into an auditorium of 2,000 people with no microphones. So I would bring in friends. I had a box at the opera. So every opera, I would invite 3 people to come. I'd bring a date and then like another couple and bring them. And I was introducing all these 35, 40, 50-year-old people to the opera. And it was revelation to them. The same one I had. They're like, this is amazing. I always thought opera was boring. It was for old rich people. It would be stuffy and pretentious. And oh my God, that's amazing, right? That's where I feel we're at in network marketing. We
Well,
cannot hang on, all of us baby boomers who built all these companies and made them billion-dollar companies. We're we're going to be dead soon. And
well,
we got to replace ourselves, and we're going to need to bring in younger demographics.
100%. The thing that we also have to realize, like, here's my observation too about younger generations. There's a lot of what would I say, sort of you know, there's a lot of discussion around they're not ambitious, they're lazy, blah 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 blah. That has not been my experience.
No, that's bullshit. That's
That is
boomer bullshit.
absolute BS. You know, I have kids in this generation. They're some of the hardest working people I know, and they're
Yeah.
friends. They're smart. They're hungry. They're driven. They work hard. It's just, the way they approach things is just a little different. For example, they're a little more protective of the time that they have away from work. They're,
Mhm.
where we would, if our boss said, we need you here 100 hours, we'd be like, okay. They're just not going to do that. They have a little bit more of a willingness to set a boundary around appropriate expectations, if you will. And that's not a bad
Yes,
thing.
I agree with that strongly.
And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And, and it's because when you think about the baby boomer generation, you had such a large population of people competing for jobs. And the way that you kept your job was to work harder, work longer than the guy next to you. This
Yeah.
generation, there's fewer people for more jobs now. So
Yeah.
we have
Now there's jobs competing for people instead of
exactly.
people competing for jobs.
And so they're a little, so they understand that dynamic. But the thing that I want, anyone watching this who's made it to the end to really get is there's a lot of benefit to having multi-generational teams. Um, there's because we can learn from each other and we can bring our strengths to create an interdependence that is going to elevate the entire team. You're going to have a whole plethora of views that can come to the table to solve problems. You're going to have just an increased capacity to understand societal trends, which in any network marketing business is imperative that you understand where the trends are, where things are going, and where things are heading, and what people are looking for. And those and different generations are going, like, just like right now with network marketing, if you look at baby boomers, most of them can't retire. The end of the baby boom, it's the
Yeah.
older baby boomers that were able to retire because their companies still gave them pensions. But when you look at anyone maybe 67 or younger right now in the baby boomer generation, most of them can't retire. They have no idea how they're going to retire. And so we have an opportunity for them.
Yeah.
And when you get to Gen X, they're kind of like baby boomers, maybe a little grumpier. um, they're facing very much the same thing as the baby boomer, maybe not as urgent, but they've weathered some very, very big economic challenges in their lifetime. They've
Yeah.
weathered the tech crash, the Great Recession, and now this inflationary economy. And it's killed their, it's taken its toll on what they had created asset wise, whether it was their house, all the things. So, and then of course the younger generation with student loans and and the state of, the higher education system, it's sort of working against their best interests in many ways, and the cost of housing. Every generation has challenges that are impact their future tremendously. And we have a business that can help all of them, and we've got to learn to work side by side and understand that there's kind of a place for all of it. And we've got to really look at what people bring to the table and accept that which fits, and sort of maybe push out that which doesn't. Because there's things that, we have done through the years building our businesses that no longer fit, that have to kind of be discarded because it doesn't work. It doesn't work in today's marketplace, and that's okay, right? It's knowing when to pivot, it's knowing what to get rid of, it's knowing what to add. And that's where really deeply understanding the business model is going to make or break the longevity of your organization, I think.
Amen. Hallelujah. I'm all in. Yeah, that's where we got to go. That's where we got to end up.
Yeah.
Thank you again for doing this, as always. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to shout out at the world before we go?
Just, we have a great profession. I get this is the question I get asked the most, Randy. Where do you see network marketing going? Oh my gosh. I think as we see more and more technology become sort of invading our lives, especially AI profiles, where we don't know if it's a real person, or if is it a person, is it not a person? People are going to look to people they know, like, and trust for products, opportunities. We're just like, the environment that's ahead is exactly the right environment for what we do. And I just think this is really the right arena to plant your stake in. I really do. I believe so much in what we're doing.
I do too. I think we're entering an incredible era of growth for our profession. All right, all you guys watching, listening, remember to subscribe. Tell your team. If you're watching on YouTube, and if you're not, you're missing two just gorgeous people that you could be looking at on the screen instead of just hearing our beautiful voices. If you're on YouTube, get us down below in the comments. Like, subscribe, share. New show every Tuesday, the Duplication Nation MLM podcast. Miss Dana Collins, as always, thank you so much.
Randy, good to chat.
Everyone else, peace, love, and unicorns.